welcome to day 3 of CanWeek, I believe. It is just about getting too dark to film with natural lighting at 3:30 p.m. So, shall we? I'm going to be talking about 2 books today by the same author, which is Lawrence Hill, because we're talking about the Book of Negros, as well as Dear Sir, I Intend to Burn Your Book, which was a Henry Kreisel lecture for the CLC, Canadian Literature Center. To mention, I'm basically doing the same video as Jason, who I mention in like every video because he is my CanLit queen, but that video will be linked. You should probably watch it. It's a little bit more succinct than what I normally yell about for 4 minutes. This here book I haven't actually read in a long time. From what I gather and remember, it was very good. In brief synopsis, it is about Amanita, who is captured as a young girl from West Africa and forcibly placed in the slave trade, where she ends up in South Carolina on a plantation. And as per the flap in the book, because I'm not great at explaining things, eventually she has the chance to register her name in the Book of Negros, which is a historic British military ledger allowing 3,000 black loyalists passage on ships sailing from Manhattan to Nova Scotia. That was way too close there. The reason that I think that this book is so important, specifically in the CanLit context and how it talks about like coming over to Nova Scotia, Birchtown, that whole thing, because the way that Canada's interaction with slavery is framed as if slaves went through the underground tunnel and came to Canada as a utopia who welcomed them. Like, that's literally how Canada is positioned in the global context of the slave trade and slavery. So, just so you know, slavery had been an established institution within Canada for a century. And this also included, like, in New France, it also specifically included Métis people who were brought into slavery. And Birchtown and Nova Scotia in particular was in no way a utopia for black people, and doesn't even remain to me. There's also the history of Africville. And so a really great author on the subject of blackness in Canada and how it is invisibilized in the Canadian context is Catherine McKittrick. I'm going to leave links to some of her work down below. Since this book has achieved such success, it was really like a CanLit moment, but as well as an international moment. However, when this book started to become published, distributed abroad, the name had to be changed a lot. And thus is Dear Sir, I Intend to Burn Your Book, which is his essay about his encounters with censorship in regards to his book. But the Dear Sir, I Intend to Burn Your Book is a letter he received from Roy Groenberg, I think is his name. Basically said, Dear Sir Lawrence Hill, we descendants of enslaved in the former Dutch colony Suriname want to let you know that we do not accept the book with, like, that they accept the title and that they see the title named as it is such was like inherently violent. That's pretty much how Lawrence begins his lecture. It's talking about that letter and how his response to that was, well, this is the name of a historical document and I've done this with very specific intentions, etc. Would you like to have a conversation? And obviously the group didn't respond, and then they ended up burning the copies of the cover of his book, not the book itself. And so this launches Hill into a discussion of book burning and then censorship in general, and also within the Canadian context, which I think is very important, because what a lot of people don't realize, or what we don't really talk about, is that Canada has a very brutal censorship regime, because we tend to think of Canada as being a very polite and free country. No. A lot of stuff in terms of the like settler colonial project and what's allowed to be published, and also in terms of like specifically not allowing anything vaguely tinged with homosexuality to be allowed in this country for fucking decades, which included information on how to prevent HIV and AIDS during the 1980s. So I mean, I'm not mad about it, but let's keep talking. He has a really good discussion and interesting points about the limits of discussions we have on book censorship and what should and shouldn't be allowed to be in places like schools or libraries, etc. And so he has really good discussions of it on the right as well as the left in terms of when both sides start to become hypocritical and how you need to like be careful of that. I also thought it was really interesting. He talked about how him and his stepdaughter were involved in an issue where books were being banned in schools, and they were both fighting against that. There's always these arguments amongst adults, what is good and what isn't good for children, which is what happens at the border when materials aren't allowed to be brought in, just saying, is for the protection of the general well-being of the nation, as being decided arbitrarily by whatever fucking border guard happens to be there. And that no one is asking the children. Message. That's all we have time for. That was The Book of Negros and Dear Sir, I Intend to Burn Your Book by Lawrence Hill. Stay tuned for tomorrow's video. That's it. Have a great day.